Okay. That's okay. Thank you. The board is in executive session prior to this meeting to discuss two legal matters. With that, I will call the meeting to order and ask Mr. Neese to call the roll. Present.
Here.
Ms. Roberts Lightcap.
Here.
Mr. Russo.
Here.
Mr. Altieri.
Here.
You solicitor, engineer, and manager are here.
Thank you. Let the record reflect that this evening, Mr. Matt Hovey from High Schwartz is filling in as our solicitor. He comes highly recommended. I understand he's a solicitor for Spring City, is it?
Correct. Yeah.
So he has experience being a solicitor. That's good. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Neither of our solicitors could be present with us this evening. If we could all rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
In our moment of silence tonight, when next time we meet will be September, we'll be back in school with the way things have been changing recently with world events and things like that, and edicts and all kinds of stuff like that. It looks like it's going to be another challenging year for our students and our teachers. So let's keep in our prayers and our thoughts tonight, all of our teachers who are beginning their preparation for another challenging school year. Thank you. We have before us this evening's agenda. I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda or consideration of any changes.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
Which is made by Supervisor Altieri, seconded by Supervisor Russo to approve this evening's agenda. Any further questions from members of the board? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We have in our packets the minutes from our July 12th, 2021 meeting. I'll entertain a motion for approval of the minutes or consideration of any changes.
So moved as written.
Is there a second?
Second.
Which is made by Supervisor Roberts Lightcap, seconded by Supervisor Altieri to approve the minutes as written. Any further questions or discussions from members of the board? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Next on the agenda, we have 4 presentations. Hope everybody understands that brevity is the word of the day here. So we're going to start with a presentation on Gather in the Circle from Linda McIsaac. There she is.
I like brevity.
And welcome back. Weren't you gone for a while there? Okay.
So nice to see everybody.
And then is your microphone on?
Does that work?
Yeah, that's better.
Much better.
Okay, so I'm with Gather in the Circle and my co-chairs, Paul Seligson and Pam Purser. And we're here tonight to talk to you about a proposed street party that we're planning. And you can see that we have the diagram up on the screen for you. And just as a reminder, Gather in the Circle is a community volunteer committee that is committed to reimagining the St. Albans Circle area and engage the community in the process. In the beginning of the year, we held a pop-up park that we worked with the EAC to move the pop-up native garden to the St. Albans Circle area. We have been holding a farmers market since the start of June. It's been very successful with the community and the volunteers. In addition to the vendors, the community seems to really love that. And that'll continue through September. We installed, with the help of Public Works, and the township 2 pedestrian crosswalks in the circle area, and those are very popular. They're temporary. So again, it's testing the ideas, to test these ideas before we implement them long-term for the township. And then we're in the midst of working on our second pop-up park, which will coincide with our community event that we want to hold. We're going to launch it. You can see where the pop-up park is going to be located, and we're going to have that for about 3 weeks. And then we're also, the last project we're working on is traffic calming with the regional planning department and the township to calm traffic around the St. Albans Circle itself, again, to help increase the sense of pedestrian safety and just slow traffic. Again, testing ideas before it's implemented long-term is the goal, and to make sure that we're engaging the community in the process. So we're here, we want to build on the momentum of some of the projects that we've already been working on by holding this community block party. And we're going to call it Circle at Sundown. And what we propose is to ask permission to close the road, Chapel Road, and a portion of St. Albans Circle. And we're going to hold it in September. We're going to close, we'd hope to close the road for about 3 hours with a buffer of hour before and after in order to set up and break down. And we're going to have local food vendors and live music and a beer garden. We're going to have dance performances by the local dance troupe. And like our other projects, you know, the objective of this is to bring the community together and to engage them in just reimagining and activating, creating a sense of place in this very important historical area within our township. It's also aligned with the strategic plan goals of helping to create community, community culture, again, sense of place, and making sure that we are engaging stakeholders in the process. So I hope you had a chance to look over the proposed temporary special event permit, and we're just here to answer any questions you may have.
Mr. Nisa, I assume our police are going to be actively involved in the street sweep?
Yes, we're actually going to have the police department involved, as well as the Public Works Department. We have another event going on at Drexel Lodge that evening and day as well, but we believe that we have enough resources to handle both well.
Any questions from members of the board? Good. Thank you very much. Looking forward to it.
There will be an action item further down on your
Yes.
agenda, and I just want to make sure we're. Thank you.
All right. Next presentation, we have a presentation from Debra Goetz regarding communications.
If I can, before Debbie gets started, I just want to give you just a little bit of background so that we all know why Debbie's presenting what she's going to present. If you remember, we've talked about communication being a very important part of our strategic plan. People felt that one of the things that came back was they were hoping the township would do a better job at communicating, and so we started looking, and one of the possibilities was hiring somebody. As we looked at it more from the staff's perspective, we think that potentially using a third party like Debbie would allow us greater freedom to do what we need to do and give us actually, hopefully, somebody who's really gifted at doing what this is, that we probably couldn't afford to bring on to the township payroll all of one person to do all of this. And so we're going to get the benefit of a really good quality third party to help meet that. And so that's what Debbie's here to present, is what she would offer. And I hope that you have a chance just to listen and ask any questions you would have to what this would be. And again, later on the agenda would actually be approving her contract and moving forward.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to present this evening. I'm Debbie Goetz. I am Debbie Goetz Media Relations and Communications Firm. I've owned for the past 12 years. And I work with small to mid-sized businesses, nonprofits, municipalities, and individual professionals who want to raise their public profiles or tell their stories, share their news with members or with their target audiences. So I had a couple of meetings with Stephen about some of the current challenges we're looking to address. I'm going to switch. Okay, next slide, please.
Mic on.
You turn it on.
No,
Oh, I'm
it's,
sorry. There we go. How's that?
you might put it down on the deck with you. if you don't mind.
Okay. So some of the challenges that we talked about were improving internal communication processes and exploring ways to communicate with employees who don't typically use technology on a regular basis. We talked about enhancing the township's identity and brand with residents and businesses in the community. And the event that you're talking about sounds like the perfect thing to be promoting in the community. Updating the website to make it more user-friendly so that people can click around a lot easier to find the information that they're looking for and not get frustrated going to a million different pages on the website. Enhancing the current newsletter or adding a second newsletter, and you have a presentation following me about that to allow for more frequent distribution and contact with the community. Promoting significant township events, milestones, et cetera, through local and regional media. That's something I do a lot of with Warrington Township at this time. And becoming more active and engaging on social media. So some of the proposed tactics that we talked about were conducting a communications audit. So we would take a look at all of your different methods of internal and external communications, your website, your social media, your email platform, your newsletter, and figure out a way to optimize your communication across all of those different platforms so that everybody that you need to communicate with, whether it's internal or external, everybody's getting the information in the way that they typically like to receive information. So how should you communicate? You have to think about how your constituents or target audiences like to receive information. Where do they go for information? They might go to the web, to social media, face-to-face meetings. They might go to your township newsletter. That happens to be my township newsletter, which these guys do. But you need to think about how people need and want to receive information and make sure that you're communicating so you don't leave anybody behind. And each target audience may communicate differently and require different messaging. So your homeowners or your business owners or your public works employees or your administrative staff, they all might have different ways of needing to receive information. And so you want to make sure, and I know, Stephen, you said it was a priority to make sure that people who were not very technology savvy were still being included in the conversations that were being had. So it's important that we look at all of these different modes of communication and make sure that everybody's getting information the way that they need to. Another thing we talked about was some public relations initiatives to announce or promote fabulous events. I noticed on the website there was a proclamation about Children's Mental Health Awareness Week. That would be something I would have liked to have seen promoted. Awards, achievements, certifications, police and fire department news, any ordinance or budget announcements, and charitable initiatives. These are all wonderful things that the community should know about that's going on here. And some examples of what I've done for Warrington, this was a budget award that they received, and that's the gentleman on the right is Barry Lever. He's the township manager, and he's receiving his award. And this was in one of the hyper-local newspapers that is distributed throughout the community in everybody's mailbox. The next thing is Lions Pride Park on the next slide. This was an initiative in the township with the Lions, the Warrington Lions Club, and they took an unused area that used to be a day camp and made a beautiful park that is accessible to people of all abilities. And so we just had the groundbreaking in the last year in the middle of all of COVID. The next thing, can you click on that link? This was an initiative that, that the township got involved with in the middle of COVID. Click on that.
Well, we love sharing the good things that are happening all over our area. Helps us all out, doesn't it? Oh, yeah. And check this out. A local police department is sharing its work. These are K-9 officers, Jolie and
That's
Murphy,
okay. So I'll
with
tell
the
you what's
Warrington
going on.
Police
So
Department.
I
They're
happened
taking
to see
part
on the K9
in
on
story
the police
time
department's
online in
Facebook
order to
page
stay connected with
that
the
Officer
children
Plum
and
one of the
families in
K9s
their
from our
communities.
story
There are also
last year
activity
engaged with the
pages
community
that the
because
kids can
police
print
officers
out and work
couldn't
on
go
at
to
home
community
and then
parks and
share on the
schools to
K-9
talk to
police
kids
unit's
and engage
Facebook
with them.
page.
So they started this story time and they started these activity pages on their Facebook page. And I saw that and I talked to the chief of police and I talked to the township manager and I said, this is a news story right here. The community would love this. And they did. And we did such a good job of getting media coverage that I actually got fired by the police chief for doing too much. And he said Officer Plum and Jolie needed to get back to their day jobs. So that was an example of something that they did that the township, the community loved it. And the final slide, I'm not one who typically pats herself on the back, but I wanted to share this with you because I had asked Barry Luber for a LinkedIn recommendation, and instead he wrote me a one-page letter, which I had shared with Stephen and Suzanne. And it explains why they hired me and what they get out of it. And I thought it would be important for you to see it. So Barry says, Warrington Township is a medium to large size township located in Bucks County. We're still growing with both commercial and residential real estate development. And because of this, we constantly have many exciting projects and events going on, which will improve services or the quality of life for our residents. The problem was we weren't doing a good job of getting the message out to our residents and businesses of all the great things we were doing in the community and to improve the community. And I think that can be said for a lot of townships and municipalities. They do a lot of great things, but they don't always know how to get the word out about it. And that's what appealed to Stephen and Suzanne when we had our initial conversation. And since they've hired me, Barry said, I've yet to let them down. All the events that I publicized for them have gotten some kind of news coverage and a lot of exposure for the community. And that means a lot to them. And I hope to have the opportunity to do the same for Newtown Township in Delaware County. Not to be confused, as I did with Newtown Township in Bucks County, right around the corner from me. Do you have any questions that I can answer for you? They told me to be brief, and I'm from New York, so I have to talk really fast.
So Stephen, in terms of process,
Yep.
I mean, I have, based off of our conversation, kind of how it works, but can you just explain so the public knows how that works in terms of Debbie actually doing this job with regards to press releases, in regards to information, how she gets that information and disseminates it out?
So obviously, Debbie needs to find the information from somewhere, and that'll come from us as the township. We might be from you as a board member, it might be from me, it might be from various places that we would get our information. It might be if we're supporting the fire company or we're supporting whomever, getting the information from them, we would give it to Debbie, Debbie would put it together. We would then review it before it actually ever goes to publication. And then it would go out to publication or be released based on that. So the township would always have the opportunity to review what's going out and make sure it's consistent with the message that we're trying to put out and consistent with our vision and mission.
In terms of the social media platforms, for the ones that aren't already existing, such as I know you mentioned in your RFP here or your proposed scope of work, excuse me, Instagram, Twitter, so on and so forth. For those social media platforms that are not currently in existence, who would own that content? Would it be you or would the township retain intellectual property over it?
So any work that I do for the township, you own.
Okay.
Okay. You would need to make me an admin if you want me to do the posting.
Okay.
I have a client that's a CPA firm and I curate content for blogs and social media and I turn it over to them once a week and they post the social media. I actually have the login credentials for their blog and I post their blogs, but it's entirely up to you whether you want someone from the township, you know, to own the credentials or whether you want me to be an admin and do the posting.
Yeah,
for
I was
you.
more or less asking about, and you answered it in the beginning of that, the intellectual property rights, right? So for
Right.
instance,
It's all your,
Instagram,
it's
you
all
don't
your
have
property.
Instagram. So if you were to come in, create an Instagram account, and then let's say you were to leave in a few years, would you be taking that information with you? But you already answered that question. We would retain ownership on it. Great.
Yes.
The next question I have is based off of kind of what Stephen said right there. not all of us are, or any of us actually here are communication background individual. I like to think of myself as an amateur communications person. But I guess the question I have is, you might see something that sticks out, for instance, like that canine video that you just did in Warrington. So do you also monitor our agendas and look at the information that we are voting on? Because 9 times out of 10, I should say, I feel like a lot of the information comes obviously after we vote on these things, outside of the individual events that are taking place community-wide. So will you monitor those agendas, or is it kind of up to us to identify what we think is newsworthy and to send it over to you?
It's really a good question. So it could go either way. If you would like me to devote time to monitoring your agenda, I absolutely can. What happens with Warrington is I have a template that I share with them, and they basically fill in the blanks. Like, think about when you did a current events article or a book report, it's the who, what, where, when, how, and why, any special guests, any quote from the chairman of the supervisors or from the head of Parks and Rec or whatever. And that's what we use to compile whatever press materials or pitch or whatever we're working on. So that's kind of part of the process, but run me back the question again so I don't not answer it.
No, the question was essentially, will you monitor our
Yes,
agenda?
okay. So there
The
was
reason
a
why,
time.
just to clarify, the reason why I'm asking that is, again, because you might see something in our agenda that you view as
Right.
newsworthy that we might just gloss over because it's something we've been dealing with for
Right.
years. That's why I'm asking that question.
And interestingly, I did do that last year for Warrington. And I think because their budget just was tight during the year because of everything going on with COVID, I made a list of things that I thought were media worthy. And so, yes, I could do the same thing for you.
Got it.
Yeah.
I think that, just for clarification, in the beginning, as part of the audit, we're going to be examining a lot of things to come up with what's the best way. I'm going to bring Debbie in. She's actually going to attend a couple of our staff meetings so that she understands how we process information. Being here tonight helps her understand how you process information so that we can really come up with the best way to get her the information as we go along, so we understand through the process. And it will mean that we have to do a really good job of saying, here's the 20 things that we're working on. Any ideas of which ones you think we ought to be, here's the ones that we think ought to be out, but as she hears it, Debbie has shown a couple things that, based on our website and based on a few things, that she thinks that we could make some tweaks and put some emphasis here and some emphasis there that she's already mentioned to us as some things to look at.
Got it. And the last question I have, and I don't mean to put you on the spot with it, but obviously, your background has you all over the place. Do you have media connections already existing in Delaware County?
I have media connections throughout the region and across the country.
That's all I wanted to know. Perfect. Thank you, Debbie.
Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Remind everybody that we do have a separate item on the agenda under new business to consider the contract. So does anybody have any other questions for Debbie at this time? Super. No, you're fine. Thank you very much.
They always run away from me when I'm done asking questions. It's a compliment. Don't worry about it.
Third presentation tonight, we have a newsletter presentation from Hometown Press, Joseph Ferry. Mr. Ferry, if you don't mind, take the podium there and briefly entertain us.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm going to turn it over to Greg Cook, who's the president of Hometown Press.
Okay. Thanks, Josh. Greg, before you get started, Mr. Neese, did you want to add something?
I just was going to say, as part of the conversation that we had with Debbie, we were discussing our newsletter concerns. And if you remember, as part of the strategic plan, one of the things that came back was that some of the folks in the community felt like we didn't have our own newsletter, even though we put information in community every quarter. And so Hometown Press has a product that allows us to basically put out our own newsletter and with our own information in it. And so I've asked them to come tonight to present to you what their product is.
Thank you so much for having. Greg Cook is my name. We're from Percy, Pennsylvania, up in Bucks County. Hometown Press works with over 100 municipalities on a regular basis now, publishing their official newsletter. Some municipalities put it out twice a year, some do it 4 times a year, so that would be totally up to you. But the beautiful thing about it is that they are provided to you at no cost. There's no cost at all for the publishing, for the layout, for the design. The only financial obligation the municipality would have would be the cost of postage and mailing if you would choose to mail them out to your residents. As far as page count, that's 32 pages is our maximum. We don't like to put out, I should say that these are provided free of charge to you, because what we do is we would then go into the business community and offer businesses the opportunity to place their message in the newsletter to put their message in front of the residents. But we do all the legwork. We make all the contacts. Obviously, you would have final approval of all participating businesses. And that's pretty much it. It's a pretty simple process. Your content would be emailed into us. We would lay everything out for you, all the photographs and things. You can give your newsletter a name. We can pick the colors that you want to put it in. I gave everybody one sample of Newtown Township in Bucks County. We've been working with them for years. And I have a packet here, which I'll leave with Steve, with a whole bunch of different newsletters from all over the area that we work with. But like I said, we work with over 100 municipalities now, and we welcome the opportunity to be of service to you guys.
How often do you put out, like the Newtown Township one we're looking at here?
That one's 4 times a year.
You do it? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Mr. Neese, any idea what that would cost to mail to everybody? I mean,
I don't have an exact cost at this time for you because we're working through the exact number of mailings. I'm guessing. how
Well,
much per
everything's
cup-
done hopefully through an every door direct mail, which is now, I think it's going up in August, but it's around 20 cents a piece to
I knew it
mail.
was cheaper than the
Yeah.
normal rate. Yeah.
So, I mean, if that case at 20 cents a piece, we're probably looking at about $1,500 per quarter. We're actually budgeting higher than that amount and not knowing what it's going up to.
Well, then outstanding, that's great.
You're working within Community Magazine now, is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah, I'm pretty familiar with them. So, yeah, this would be your own newsletter. It would be totally Newtown Township information. You wouldn't get lost in the content with other municipalities in the school district and everything.
Your business model is also similar to that of the Newtown Square Friends magazine, right? Are you
I am
familiar
not
with that?
familiar with that.
Okay.
Best version, yeah.
Yeah, Best Version Media, I think is what owns it. Do you do any other municipalities in Delaware County?
You know, it's funny, we do not, no.
Okay,
Chester Heights, the borough, but I don't think that's in Delaware County.
it is.
It is, all right, that's
Yeah.
fine. That's
I
fine.
can't say though, I've seen a lot of newsletters from some Delaware County. Is there other folks that are doing that?
You got me on that one, John.
I know in my travels, I've seen lots of Montgomery, Bucks County towns have this type of thing.
They do a lot of calendars. I don't know if they do.
Yeah, I
newsletters.
don't know that I've seen many newsletters in Delaware County from Delaware County municipalities. But I think it's a great idea for the town.
If we were to do this, and I don't know if this is a question to you or if it's a question to Steve, but if we were to, is there an agenda item for this as well?
There is.
Okay,
There is, yeah.
if we were to vote on this tonight and it was to pass, when would we be able to get our first edition out?
I would think that at the earliest at this point would be probably late October, early November.
So just, we'll talk about this more when we get to the agenda item. My goal is to continue within community because I think it's important because that supports our school district. It also supports our leisure services, Marple Newtown Leisure Services. We would do this in addition to that. The goal would be to be in between the one that we're doing within community, and so that something would be in the residents' hands about once every 6 weeks.
Got it.
I mean, I don't think we can get too much information out there based on the comments we hear from our residents. So the more the merrier. Does anybody else have any questions for Mr. Cook? Super. Thank you,
All right,
sir.
thank you.
That's an example of a brief presentation.
Thank you. Yep, appreciate it. Thank you so very much.
Our next and final presentation is a presentation on our 2022 capital budget. Mr. Neese, shall use Mr. Cook's example as a brevity.
I'm turning it over to Mr. Lafayette and I make no comment.
Are you qualified to run all the stuff there while Mr. Lafayette does his thing?
Yeah, I'm trying to keep us straight. So.
So tonight I want to give you a brief outline of the 2019 proposed capital budget. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm looking at a slide that you go to the next. 2022.
You caught me off guard, Rich.
Couple years. Yeah, so at first we wanted to start out by giving some examples of capital purchases we had in prior years. As you can see in 2019, there was $553,000 spent. There's a variety of IT-related items, some vehicles, some parts equipment, etc. In 2022, the number is much larger. As you can see, it's closer to $6.2 million. Although there was a capital purchase freeze midway through the year, there's a couple items that will stick out to you. The fire truck, 1.1 million, the road program, 2.2 million and 2.3 million. In addition, there was the $350,000 purchase of the sawmill property. I would just like to make note that although these were all capital purchases, some of them were funded through borrowings, such as half the road program and the fire truck, and half the sawmill property was also purchased with open space dollars. So the most recent budget, your 2021 capital budget, has an approved budget of $1.3 million. Much like similar years, you will see a variety of vehicles, property surveys, overall replacements, and upgrades to the township. As you
Rich,
may,
I'm sorry
Sure.
to interrupt. Can I ask a question or do you want us to go through it?
Sure.
You say the property survey. Can you explain what that is?
Sure.
Because that seems to be a reoccurring. We understand what the track is or the truck and things like that.
Yeah, sure. So the property survey is actually getting the boundaries of the township properties line. So when it comes to property maintenance issues, there's no questions of is that township property or is that individual's property?
And are we almost through that now with the township properties? Because I know it was like a 5-year plan. Was it a 5-year plan?
Two-thirds, halfway.
Yeah, we're about halfway. We've been getting mapping.
Please.
Thank you. So during these surveys, we've been getting mapping done. So not only are we verifying what the boundaries are, but we're also getting formal maps and making sure that there's permanent markers in there so that this is a question that we're resolving now. It doesn't come up again. It really came that we noticed the need when we had the ash tree surveys, and we started realizing how many trees were on property lines, and we weren't really sure if they were our responsibility or a neighbor's one. That's kind of where it originated.
And we've never had clear cut. I mean, this has been the biggest time that we've done something like this.
It is there. Some of the properties have permanent markers in them. Some of them, a lot of them don't. And a lot of the time they would determine that, well, it's about here where the property ends.
Right.
Well, that really isn't wise.
So you're doing all the parks like Newbie Park, Greer Park, everything?
Exactly.
We're putting monuments in, so we know.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And our goal probably eventually in some places will to, like we're doing at the Meadow Preserve, we've actually put up some fencing along some of those along the property lines there. And it's not a fence that runs the whole way, but it's a fence and then there's about 100 feet between each fence post kind of thing. And then there's like 2 sections of fence and then there's another 100 feet. But to give an idea so that people know when they've entered the park, that they're on Newtown's property and they're on the park.
To delineate it.
To help delineate it and also to help the residents know, yeah, I am responsible up to this spot, but
Yeah.
I'm not responsible on that side.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
So if you recall from previous years, we use a ranking system. A is going to be a safety issue. B is going to be a best practice, or we need to maintain our current service. C is a recommended upgrade, and then D would be something that it's a suggestion, but we're not fully ready to implement it yet. And then within each category, we rate them on priority 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the first up is administration capital items. We are going to request admin vehicle as well as document scanning. So staff recommends that we purchase a new admin vehicle at the price of $37,000. Currently, the codes vehicle has seen better days, to be honest. The overall goal would to be purchase a new administration vehicle, shift the current administration vehicle over to codes, and repurpose that vehicle for the codes department. Sure.
Say that again, Imre.
You have in here declining code
Well, it's probably not a defined term, but in this case, the vehicle's actually rusting out and we're getting to the spot where we're not sure it's going to pass inspection anymore. In this case, the rocker panel's gone. He stepped out of the car and it actually, the only thing that's holding the rocker panel together is the paint. And so.
So we make sure we use it.
We're trying to get the most out of them, but in this case, we think we probably need to do, we're actually repurposing some old police cars along the way as well. We just recently did that for, Carl had a police vehicle similar year. I believe it was a 2009, I think something along those lines. So we're talking about 12-year-old vehicles that we've done, but his wouldn't pass inspection this year. So we've taken one of the police cars that we're taking out of service this year, and we've kind of revamped it and give it to him to go a little bit longer. So we're doing that as well, but in this case, we have 3 codes vehicles that all 3 have come really to end of life. They're all at least 12 years old or older, and they may not have a lot of miles on them. But they're just deteriorating, rusting out.
I thought declining was more uplifting. Yeah. So the next item that we're going to talk about for administration is the scanning of documents. One of the things that came out of the strategic plan is make government more accessible. Currently, we get a fairly large amount of right to know requests, and we have a relatively large storage unit across in the public works. Sometimes it requires staff to go over there and actually dig through boxes to get some of the information that we need. We are proposing to take this in 3 phases. The overall cost is $130,000. The 2022 cost would be $41,000, and that is for the full scan of the upstairs storage unit in the public works. And for those of you that don't know, that's what it looks like. There's about 7 or 8 rows of boxes that look like that. This would be an outside service. We currently have a part-time gentleman that helps us scan, but he is just keeping us getting the new information scanned in. This would be scanning historical data.
We're going to focus on historic data that is needing to be kept. So you have some data that we only have to keep for a certain number of years, but we have a lot of data that we need to keep in perpetuity, particularly land plans and things like that. So we have that requirement. So the focus is on that first, and allowing us to, for scanning, once it's scanned, we would be able to pull those documents up hopefully very quickly, be able to respond to people's right to know requests faster. But also it would just save a lot of staff time that we're spending going over and digging through boxes and trying to find what it is that we're looking for.
Who's cataloging it all? Who catalogs it all? I know it's an outside company, right? Or they've been putting in that whole
Well, we have to initially catalog it so that it's what when they scan it, we know how it gets filed. A lot of this is property files, so it's going to be cataloged by property file. The beginning, to catch up on the old, some of it's going to be scanned as a solid document right now. And then over time, we could start breaking it apart. But we're trying to get it initially digitized and then start working on the next phase with that.
Now with new land plans,
Yes.
right, current, they submit it electronically?
They have to submit
those?
it electronically, and we're also working on having it submitted once they do the as-built and submitting that back to us electronically as well.
Now, on the ongoing, the ongoing developments that we have, if they're not scanned, I'm just thinking of Lissitor and some of the other larger ones. Those are all electronic now. I mean, why we have the developer to make them do that now as opposed to us going in paying to get their older stuff scanned.
We're doing it when they come to the as-built section,
Okay.
not requiring it for what they turned in before, but where they're headed when we get to the as-built, so that we have the as-builts.
Can we make that as a request when we do the as-built, that we request their because they've got to have them electronically
They're
now,
original as well. We can
Yeah.
do that.
because in that way, at least we save something. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know how big that is, but I mean, it saves time anyway.
Yeah.
So it's just a suggestion if you can
Yeah.
include that in the as-built.
So like I said, we were going to phase this out into 3 different phases. The first, like I stated, was going to be the public works storage area. The second would be all the property files. That's at a cost of $62,000. That would come in 2023. And phase 3 would be $27,500. And this would be all the remaining documents, including the flat files, things along those lines. So we always like to break capital up into new and replacement items. Our total is going to be $78,000 for admin. That includes $41,000 in new items and $37,000 in replacement items. Moving on to codes. Codes is going to suggest the land development rewrite. With the zoning rewrite well underway, it would make sense to move right into a land development rewrite. This would align with the strategic plan by encouraging the smart growth. Additionally, it would also make the land development requirements more consistent with the current codes. Staff would suggest hiring a third party for approximately $65,000 to get this done. That's correct.
That's
yes.
correct.
And that would be $65,000 in replacement costs for 2022. The next department is police. As always, you will see the 2 new police vehicles, a message board, a speed sign, and some temporary speed table and humps. That is correct, yes. So as we've done in the past couple of years, we would suggest the replacement of 2 new vehicles. The vehicles are starting to show signs of wear and tear. Each car costs about $53,000 with the police upgrades, so that would bring the total to $106,000 in police vehicles for 2022. And I believe you missed one, Steve.
You what?
There we go.
Oops, sorry. Getting carried away.
Yes. So we currently have 1 message board. It's always in use to the point that we can't meet the demand. Sometimes there's a need for 2 message boards in the township. This one, unlike the previous one, would have radar capability that produces reports that we can do speed studies on. So we would suggest purchasing an additional message board for $19,000, bring the total to 2 message boards.
I would clarify that the one we have now does have radar, but the reporting is not very great. This reporting would actually be just the same as our speed sign reporting. And so it would match, and all of our reporting would be the same that comes out. And that's the reason why we changed to this particular model on that.
So that is a good transition into the next slide. We currently own 2 temporary speed signs, much like the message board. The police think that there's the higher demand, so we want to double it and get 2 more temporary speed signs at a cost of $4,700 each. The next item is going to be an additional speed table and an additional speed hump. We currently own 2 tables and 2 humps. We would request to purchase an additional table and an additional hump, bringing each to 3. From speaking with the police chief and George, we believe that some areas, to get the desired effect, it's better to have 3 than 2. So the purchase of 1 and 1 would bring both of them to 3. The cost is $15,000. Yes.
I know Public Works prefers, I mean, it is a lot of work. What we like about it is that it accurately reflects what a permanent speed table or speed hump would be. And that's the best way to test, would be to put exactly what would be going down there. And I just checked them this evening. They're holding up very well. We're confident it's going to be fine. It's going to be easier to disassemble than it was to assemble. But again, the proof is you can come out and watch us as we do it. Yeah, but I don't believe that there's any other model out there that would have the same effect that I would recommend differently. It is 60 pieces per pump or table. It is an all-day job.
I think, again, just so that everybody's aware, us looking at this was to say, if we're going to accurately do and test, for example, we put 2 on Sawmill, but we really believe there needs to be a third one to make it work. And right now, we don't have a third one to install. So this would give us the ability to put the third one in that location. And if we have areas where there's only 2, we may do 2 areas of 2 and 1 area of 3, or, do those kind of things, mix them and match them.
And would we use do we use our speed signs to track? Is that how we're tracking?
So
where the
we're
speed
putting,
bumps are,
I'm
or the
sorry,
speed tables? Go ahead.
I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's fine.
And I'm not moving the camera, so I probably should, but hold on, there we go. Sorry, I should never be responsible for doing more than one thing at a time. But anyway, we know they have to be in for about 45 days. So we've done they've actually are about now ready for us to start going back and doing some testing. Because we're just now, I think we're just about the 45-day mark right about now. So we'll start looking at testing in those areas. And that's actually the other reason for those extra signs will actually help us. Speed signs, we'll be able to test both directions at the same time and really get a better idea of what is it benefiting in the area. And so in that way.
Are you getting, outside of the email that we received in our packet that was more constructive criticism than it is a complaint?
Yeah.
Are you receiving complaints from residents, or are people just passively aggressively doing what's described in that email, which is laying on their horn, so on and so forth? I mean, I've heard they've been doing it over in Echo Valley. I've seen comments all over social media about people who are fired up over the speed bumps. I'm just curious if you're receiving any complaints from people.
We have received a fair number of complaints early on. In some cases, like the email that was in your packet, I thought it was I thought the person did a nice job of sharing what his concerns were without being, I just don't want a speed table in front of my house. It was, here's what I'm experiencing. But what I'm hearing is that it is slowing down traffic. And what people need to understand, and I'm glad you brought this up, we as the township picked where they were installed. The residents who these speed tables are in front of did not pick the location. It was picked by George and Eileen and the chief going out and looking and saying, these are the strategic places to put these to make it work, to change behavior of people speeding up and down these roads. These are residential roads, speed limit being 25. And we've done the testing and we know that there's a fair amount of cars going down the road over that speed limit, not just over 25, but in most cases over 35. And because that's what triggers it. And when it raises that 85 percentile that we start saying, now we have a real problem. And in this case, the places where they are right now, that was the case.
But in that same breath, it wasn't as if we unilaterally just put them in there. We were receiving numerous complaints from residents who
Absolutely.
flood those streets. And that's how it was identified.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily inconsistent to what our traffic calming policy is, where it's neighborhood driven. These were consistently complaint areas over and over and over again, which is why we went in and did it that way.
That is correct. And by the way, we probably have 10 or 15 more that are asking for them. We just don't have the resources. And I don't think we want to put in temporary ones every year. The goal would be to eventually put in permanent ones, and you'll see that later on in the request.
So overall, that brings the police capital request to 149,535. So on to Public Works, they will be requesting a permanent speed sign, some emergency generators, F-350, the municipal building roof replacement, some permanent speed humps like we just talked about, school replacements, school signal replacements, and sign replacements as well. So as we just talked about with this, the temporary speed humps, Public Works would be requesting some permanent speed signs. If they work very similarly to the temporary speed signs, except they're permanent. If the desired effect from the temporary speed sign is shown, we would request putting a permanent speed sign up.
How do they operate?
They would actually be tied into electric at a nearby electric pole. Let me explain real quick. We're actually being approached by PennDOT to look at this as a solution in a couple particular locations that we get constant complaints, particularly around corners or curves in the road where the sight distance is limited. We want to start figuring out how to slow that down. I've been working with Don Centofanti from PennDOT, who has said in 2 locations, he thinks these really are the answer to help versus spending in. We've looked at another alternative, which was to increase sight distance, and it's like $200,000 or $300,000. And so these signs seem relatively inexpensive if they'll solve the problem.
Are these on PennDOT roads?
The 2 that we're looking at right now, yes, are on PennDOT roads, but PennDOT signage becomes township responsibility on these roads, and so it becomes our responsibility to get them in. Goshen and Gradyville.
So the next item up will be emergency generators. Over the past 4 or 5 years, we've talked about emergency generators at traffic lights throughout the township. Currently, we have 22 traffic lights in town, and we own 14 emergency generators, leaving 8 remaining generators, which we are going to request at a cost of $9,600 in 2022. This would give us the 22 we need to have a backup generator for every traffic signal. The next request would be the purchase of an F-350 with a plow and salt spreading bed. This purchase would move the Public Works goal to having 2 Mack trucks, 2 750s, 2 550s, and 2 350s. In addition, there will be an additional Mack that's mothballed and an additional 550 that's mothballed for large winter events. This 8-vehicle fleet gives Public Works Department different sizes of vehicles to get into different areas of the township and address different needs.
Sure. So if a vehicle is not going to be in active rotation, but it's still usable in an emergency, then we would want to keep 1 Mack and 1 550. On occasion, like for example, the Mack that we're considering mothballing, because we've put some money into it now, we might use as like the chipper truck during the year. So it may have an occasional use during the year, but then during the winter, it would be very useful to have that in case one breaks down, we could put another one right back out again. Not in the normal rotation, but available in an emergency.
George, the 350, that'd be a pickup, not a dump truck?
It would be a pickup, exactly. So it would be a utility truck. It would have, the toolboxes on the back of it, but it has a salt box.
And once we're using a 1989 Mack, do I read that correct?
Yeah, so Mac 1 has finally gotten to the point where even the staff who refuse to let go of it are ready to let go of it.
That's a 32-year-old truck.
Yes.
We could literally apply for antique plates for it in Pennsylvania. 25 years is considered.
The antique plate would be in better shape than the truck, I will tell you. Sorry.
I mean, I don't know how we're still using that. I guess it's good for us for keeping it running, but that's
Same age as me.
you're the antique plant.
And I will just note that the 350 that we're recommending, we have a 350 currently
Yes.
that's operated, so it's been a good compliment.
Okay.
So the next item would be the replacement of the municipal building roof. As everybody recalls, we did a major construction about 5 years ago at this point. One of the items that we did not replace was the roof. The roof is currently 19 years old and showing some signs of wear and tear, especially after some of the larger storms we had. We would replace about 7,200 square feet of roof. That also includes the ambulance bay storage area out back, and that would cost approximately $75,000. As we just talked about, permanent speed humps, we're requesting $90,000 to install up to 9 permanent speed humps. If the temporary speed humps and tables have the desired effect, it would make sense to take them out and install the permanent ones.
It would be really, sorry, it would be based really on what we had put in. So in one location, we only had 2, and we think 2 is the right answer. But in Sawmill, for example, we think is really the right answer is 3. We've had a couple other locations that we looked at. We think it may even be 4 over the whole length of the road to make the desired impact. But the idea is whatever we test is what we would go back and put in. So in a place we did 2, we'd go back and put 2, a place we did 3, or whatever.
So something else we've been doing over the past couple of years was the refurbishment of the school signals. We are going to request to refurbish 4 school signals at the cost of $2,500 a piece, bringing the total 2022 budget to $10,000. As you can see, the one on the left is an older one that hasn't been refurbished yet. The one on the right is much newer and more aesthetically pleasing. Yeah.
And they're LEDs.
So the next request would be continuing the sign replacement program. This is something else that's been in the budget, I believe, the past 5 years. The overall goal was to, I'm going to try this word, to bring them up to retro reflectivity standards set by the state, right? Practice that. So we have about 2 more years of the program, we believe. We're currently on state roads. All the township roads have been replaced, but we are still responsible for some signage on state roads, and that would be the 2022 $10,000 cost. So that brings our public works totals to $281,000, with 111 of it being new and 170 of it being replacement items. Last but not least, we have some park capital items, the Bartram Bridge, some replacement basketball courts at Newby Park, replace the turf field, the property survey that we went over a bit earlier, and last, some additional signage. So after assessment by CMC engineers, it's suggested that the Bartram Bridge have major structural repair done to it. The overall repair would be about $250,000. We're well aware that we would need to talk to Willistown about this because it's a shared asset. So just for the budgeting purposes, we split the 250 in half and put 125. I have reached out to Willistown and they said that they're open for discussions, but they have not started their budget process yet, so it wouldn't.
So all we're doing at this point is putting this in the budget. I mean, we can't put $125,000 or half to the bridge without more plans, engineering permits, going out for bid, all those things that the Bridge Commission seems to, I don't know, forget.
Yes,
So,
you're 100% correct.
Okay.
It's a rough number that we can place in the budget, and we'll iron
it's
out.
just a placeholder, right? We're not committing to do anything until they figure out how we're going to get this project actually done.
Yep,
Yeah,
correct.
and I would make note that we are aware from our own awareness that there are some foundation issues on the bridge that are very important to be addressed
Sure.
over the next couple of years. And so this is setting some of the money aside to move us in that
I
direction.
just think legally, we have to move ahead properly.
Absolutely. We would have one of the 2 townships take the lead, do the bidding process.
Well, that's what I was gonna say, maybe that should be something that comes out of the commission and back to either Russ or Willistown to take the lead, do the
Yeah.
process, and then we just build the other town for the other half or something like that.
Yeah.
And you said Willistown is open to that, or when will we know when Willistown commits?
Willistown said that we would be open to conversations when they started their budget.
Okay.
I believe, just from previous years, I believe they started in about September-ish. So whatever open to
Can you
discussion.
keep us abreast of what happens in Willistown? Because if we're putting away 125, I want to make sure that they're at least doing, especially since my understanding is that the structural issue for the foundation is on the Willistown side.
Right. And it's just by virtue of the way the creek meanders through there.
Well, it's actually the runoff, I think, from Gradyville. Is that what it is? Yeah.
Combination of both.
So yeah, we'll keep you informed
Okay.
as the discussions happen. Next would be the restoration of some of the basketball court at Newby Park. As you can see, it's just showing signs of wear and tear. So we recommend doing some upgrades, replacing the backboards, doing some pavings, things along those lines at a cost of $14,000. So your big ticket item this year is $450,000 to replace the turf field located out back of the municipal party, or I'm sorry, outside of the municipal building. Turf has a rough lifespan of about 10 years. From what I'm told, Gable Field has had the turf on it for longer than 10 years. In addition, it has been through some severe storms in the past couple of years. I believe about 2 years ago, we actually had to file an insurance claim because of a major storm did some damage to it. It actually lifted the turf up, so we had to have it repaired. Obviously, that's not helping out with its lifespan, so we need to start considering replacing the turf.
Now, just for clarification, we paid nothing for that field to begin with, correct?
That is, I believe it was donated, that is
Right.
correct, yes.
Has there been any thought, and maybe, I don't know, maybe I get shot for this, but has there been any thought that maybe we just go back to a natural grass field rather than a turf field?
I think this, I don't know the answer to this, but I think that isn't it usually cost equal essentially the amount of money you would spend in maintaining it every
And
year?
maybe it is, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the one thing that we do know is there's a fairly large stormwater management system that was put under this field because it was put in basically over an area that got wet pretty often. And so we've been able to keep an area where it's dry and able to play and do those kind of things.
That's fine.
So that's the reason why we would do that. I do know there's some conversations that have been brought to our attention. Do we need, do we have to think through this from a township's perspective? Do we need to be charging for third parties that are using the field, to help offset? If you think about the turf lasting 10 years, it's about $45,000 a year to maintain that field. And that's not even maintaining, that's just replacing it. And then there's always the cost of maintenance too. So the question is do we go back to the groups, the large groups that are using it and ask them to help contribute? And so it's something that I think we need to think about. I don't have a good answer for you at this point, but it is something. So, I mean, there are groups that are typically in a township, but it's, for example, Nell uses it for some of what they are doing. We've got the Soccer Association. So there's a variety of different groups that are out and using it on a regular basis. I don't necessarily say we charge. I'm just saying it's something that we at least need to look at as part of the consideration and what we're doing.
Just with the staggering price there, from my experience, you can build a brand new turf field for half that cost. But, and I don't know if we're beyond that point now because of all the storm drain, but I just think we need to spend a few minutes looking at, is that the best way to do that? Is there alternatives to the turf? Do we go back to, I don't want to get rid of the field, but is there another alternative? I like having that field, it's a great field. But considering the cost, is there another alternative that could save us $100,000 or something like that? I just think it's something we need to look at, make sure that and understand, we're just talking budget placeholder here.
Yep.
But before we move ahead and all think we're going to replace this turf field, we should at least understand that we may need to back up a few steps and do a little bit of engineering just to find out if there is an alternative there.
Yep.
I had the same question as John, 45,000 a year. Let's evaluate, maybe turning it back to natural grass and, what would be the, cost of doing that? What would be the annual maintenance? And just like John's saying, I think it definitely deserves more thought and more evaluation before we make this decision.
Again, I think John put it well that we're just holding as a placeholder.
Is there, I guess this is a question more for you, Rich, and how, is there not a policy? Because, right, Leisure Services is the one that's in charge of running that out, correct? Well, I mean, permitting it out, permitting it out, I guess is the word I'm looking for. Is there not does Leisure Services not have a policy that if it's over a certain threshold of non-Newtown residents or non-Mark Newtown residents, they have to pay anything or no? How does that work?
80%.
Okay.
And since Rich is not at a microphone, in case somebody's home and not hearing what Rich is saying, he's saying 80% of it has to have an 80% resident threshold to use the field.
I think that what the school district does, not to keep bringing up the school district, but what the school district does is they have a threshold requirement as well. And I think if it's whatever, I think it's 80% as well, but then they do it's a substantial increase in what they have to pay for the renting or the permit fee. So I bring that up purely just as an illustrative matter to further. Yeah, exactly.
For adult groups, it's $6 per.
Yeah. It might be, I mean, it's policy 808 or 707, one of the two. And it's constantly, I mean, it's a generator for the school district to look at.
So moving on to the second to last item, much cheaper than replacing the turf field. We were looking at replacing some signage throughout the township. Mostly the welcome signs when you're coming into the town. As you can see, there's a picture of one now. They're starting to get dated, as well as possibly putting up some wayfinding signage. This would be signs located throughout the township pointing the public to some points of interest throughout the township. Last but not least is our property survey that we discussed previously. It's going to be another $10,000 this year, just like we've done in similar budgets. And we spoke about that earlier, so I won't spend much time on that. That brings our total park capital asked to $606,000, with $10,000 of it being new items and $596,000 of it being old items. And that brings the overall original proposed capital budget to about $1.2 million, with 206 of it being new items and 974,000 of it being replacement items.
Thank you, Rich. Very well done, very comprehensive. But you didn't follow the brevity cue, though.
I was gonna apologize. It wasn't as short as the.
I want to remind the public that we are not necessarily taking comments on budget tonight. We will have a time and place to do that as we progress into the fall. But are there any other questions from members of the board for Rich on the budget items? Very well done. Thank you. All right, seeing that we're just completed item 7 of 18, and we have now item 8, which is 12 reports. We're going to keep moving here. I would like to, I know there was a time issue for Rich now from the Leisure Services, so that's item 8-10. We're going to let Rich go first since he's here. Rich, do you have anything to offer from your report? Anybody have any questions for Rich? Fantastic. All right. So starting back at the top, we do have a report from our police department. Chief Lunn's not here. Report from our fire department. We have a report from emergency medical services. And then we get the public works. We have a report from public works. Mr. Sharretts, do you have anything to add?
Nothing to add.
Anybody have any questions for Mr. Sharretts? No.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Paving. You're gonna be doing some more million paving summer?
So we have been, okay, not a large scale project like a road program, but we have been doing pretty consistently patchwork throughout the township, utilizing the paving equipment.
Bottom of Earles Lane.
Sure, we are actually going to be going back and doing more on Earles Lane. We had done some. Pico is scheduled to do a little bit up at the top further, but we are going to be doing some down at the bottom where I think I know where you're.
Like it's really bad.
Yeah, yeah, we are gonna be doing some more patching there.
The problem with Earles Lane is it's a cut through street, so it's not just residential traffic. You have a lot of people going into Radnor, going to the Blue Road.
Yeah.
It's like a mile wide.
It's not a whole road segment that we're looking to do. It's gonna be patchwork until we are able to do the whole
Are you
road.
able to build the area where I'm talking about? You know what I'm talking about, George, down
I
by
do.
the pool house. When you come right where the, I don't know the name of that street, but when you come down there, it really gets
Green
bad.
country.
It really gets, yeah, the Green Country condos,
Mhm.
from there up till Radnor line, like not even, not up when you go up the hill, but like that one area, it must have been a lot of water sits down there and gets in there and pops all that pavement.
Yeah, yeah, I know exactly the area and we
That's really
do,
the area we need to look at.
yeah, and we do have that on the list to work on.
I mean, and I guess the other question is, our milling machine's not wide enough to do that. Is there a way we could hire somebody outside to mill it and then we could pave it with our equipment? Because we have the paving equipment, we just don't have a miller that wide.
Correct, and our miller isn't set up the way, you know, a large paving
No,
company would.
exactly. That's what I'm saying. Really, you need to really mill that whole section, John. don't you think?
I agree with you, but I
We have the
will,
paving equipment to pave it. or at
I
least
will admit
try.
it's very difficult to get a milling equipment even for rental at this time of year. But I guess George's gonna look into it. If there's somebody out there that we can get and we can afford it, then yeah.
And I
Yeah,
also-
I mean, it's probably gonna jump up above our, you know, our threshold.
Well,
We might have
that's
to
what I'm
bid it,
afraid
but-
of, just
but
because-
we can look at it for sure.
You might just want to look and ask a
Yeah.
question. I mean, maybe it's so much a day and that's obviously less than a day's worth of work.
Yeah,
Maybe somebody that's worked with us in the past that, you know, is gonna be fitting future work, like Lasco, they seem to get a lot of the contracts. Maybe they're willing to work with us a little bit, help us.
And they do still have punch list items on last year's contract.
I mean, I think it's worth asking. You know?
yeah. Yeah, we can do that and I'll report back on it.
There's a lot of construction trucks that go up and down that way too, to go over to Radnor and I guess you can't keep them from using that. Because they're gonna come off of 252 anyway, right?
There are procedures for restricting truck traffic, but a lot of those have to do with the width of the road and
And
things
that's a
like that.
wide
And that road, I think we'd have a hard time restricting
Yeah.
any traffic on that road just because of,
It's really, the bridge is the confining factor down
right.
there.
Thank you, George. All right, we have a report from Building and Codes. We have a report from our Finance Director, Mr. Lafayette. Do you have anything further to add? Good.
Good answer.
We have a report from our Library Director. I saw Arlene in the back. Anything to add? Any questions for Arlene? No? Okay. Report from EAC, Bruce Killian's not here. Report from Parks and Rec. We did get one. Wade Pollock was here, but it looks like he bailed out. We did Rich. And so that brings us to our Township Engineer, Eileen. Anything to report at this time in addition to what you've had in there?
Nothing more.
Anybody have any questions for
I do
Eileen?
have a question.
Please.
So we have a listener paving, trying to get out of there. And my question is, do we have a procedure written that tells them what the expectation is on all these roads where they decided it was perfectly fine just to put pavement? And every delivery truck, every contractor, everybody's pulled off to the side of the road, good somewhere between a foot to 3 feet, there's no grass. So my question is how much of a bond are we gonna take so that we don't have a conversation with the homeowners association a year from now that, hey, guys, you gotta fix all this grass? Because that problem's never going away. We're never gonna be able to fix that.
They may be able to fix it, but I'm not sure that it can be done through the existing bonding because that was based off of the approved plan that did not call for curbing.
No, I understand that.
Okay.
But I would think if I was doing that job, that I'd be held accountable to make sure the grass is going to the road. And that's. the way
Yes, they will
that's
have
the
to
way
do,
designed it.
they will have to do
It will never in
stabilization.
a million years with all the delivery trucks in that neighborhood, go on that road, and all the landscapers, all the contractors, there literally is in many areas anywhere between a foot to 2 to 3 ruts.
And they will be required to fix
Right,
those,
so.
but I don't know that I can require a bond for future.
Okay, but the point is they're never gonna get signed off. We can't get people to grow grass. They're not gonna get grass they have no irrigation, there's nothing up there that, unless they have somebody go by every day, water it. It's never gonna grow.
Well, that's part of our escrow that we're holding, correct?
Yeah, I'm just saying.
So we'll never release the escrow until we see
Yeah,
escrow.
if you know, if you notice, like, on the middle of development, they have, or the right side of development, they have curves. No, the back part, they have curves. In the middle department, they've taken the Belgian block and laid it flat as a flat curve. So it's really not as bad. It's the areas in
The estate homes
estate
primarily,
homes,
correct?
it's a never ending problem. And until they do, I mean, they could sit there and say, we're not gonna do anything, but we're gonna sit there and say.
But then we're gonna be holding the escrow until they decide they want their
Yeah, so I
escrow
just
money
wanna
back.
make sure we definitely explain that to them. I do not wanna see something come in for release now because they did all the paving. Because as far as I'm concerned, it's not complete. I don't care what judge says it's complete, it's not complete. Gotta be grass to the pavement. And it's never gonna be there. It's never gonna work.
I think there are ways they could make it happen. There are products that you can get that would be stabilizers that allow growth through it. It was one of the things that was proposed for the paper mill trail, if it ever comes.
The municipality's planning code is pretty clear that we don't release any escrow until our engineer signs off. So as long as we got leads on the
We have
stands.
that conversation now, so no one gets excited later.
Yeah, I thought you were requesting that we try and get them to put curb in
No,
where there
I don't
wasn't
care
a
what they do.
curb.
I don't care what they do, as long as they have the grass growing up to the road.
Gotcha.
And it's not like one little stalk.
Right, it has to be
I don't want
70%
Charlie Brown out here.
uniform.
I just don't think it's gonna be sufficient. And again, the amount of, I know they have those gates, they're eventually gonna close those gates, but still the amount of deliveries people are getting, the amount of landscapers and stuff in that area. I just don't see.
Any other questions for our engineer? All right, that brings us to our township manager, Mr. Neese.
Yes, I have basically just one thing this evening. I know that's a surprise. But we're working on a schedule, and it's kind of related to the change in the agenda law that was passed by the state. And so, but we're working on submission deadlines to the township for all committees and all applications. And so I just want you to know we're working on that, and we'll be getting that probably before you in the September, first meeting in September for your approval. But we'll get that set up. And so basically it'll be, you have to have it in by this date. You have to have it at, and we're going to put it on the agenda for this date. So it's very clear. So everybody knows what we're doing.
That'll bring us consistent with many other communities.
Yes.
Okay, good. Any questions for Mr. Neese? Fantastic. Moving on to payments. We have 11 items here. We're going to take the first one, then I think I can group the rest of them. So item 9.1, consider approving the $10,400 payment to Thomas J. Anderson and Associates for the preparation of the 2021 GASP 67 and 68 schedules and the 2021 actuarial valuations as follows. $5,200 to be paid out of the police pension plan and $5,200 to be paid out of the non-uniform pension plan.
So move for approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Which was made by Supervisor Partridge over online there and seconded by Supervisor Russo. Any further questions or discussions? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, just real quick, I just want to share with you that we got really great news related to our pension plans. Both of our pension plans are currently 100%, over 100% funded, which is the first time since I've been here. And I just wanted to say thank you to the board for your consistency in really making sure that we properly fund those and putting the extra monies in every year so that we got to that place. In addition to that, we went from an 8% assumption rate of a return down to a 6.5%. So for both pension plans, or the police pension plan was at 7, they're down to 6.5. And so is the non-uniform plan, which is realistically what we think we're going to get over the long term. And so I just want to say congratulations to you as a board for being forward-thinking and really making sure that our employees are taken care of. And thank you. I really do appreciate that.
I think it's a Debbie motion right
Yeah,
there.
I think so. I think she needs
I think it's a
to.
Debbie article right there.
Yeah.
She left. She didn't hear it.
That is great news.
That really,
puts
that
us
really makes a
in the
difference.
elite of, any municipal jurisdiction. I know states of California, Massachusetts, New York have pension liabilities unfunded in the billions of dollars. And to hear that ours is 100% funded, well, that's just great for long-term for our taxpayers or anything like that. That's awesome. It's great news. All right, thank you. next items 9.2 through 9.7, all deal with escrow releases. I think we could take them in one motion. So consider approving a grading escrow release totaling $1,257 to Patrick Dre Barton for a completed project at 178 Hunt Valley Circle. Consider approving a grading escrow release totaling $3,887.50 to Blank Ashkeny Properties for a completed project at 3604 Westchester Pike. Consider approving a planning escrow release in the amount of $4,734 to Blank Ashkeny Properties for a completed project at 3604 Westchester Pike. Consider approving a grading escrow release totaling $1,101.50 to Ashes Gawanji for a completed project at 3904 Whitestone Road. Consider approving a grading escrow release totaling $343 to Megan Breslin for a completed project at 109 Chestnut Street. And finally, consider approving a grading escrow release in the amount of $1,104 to Bonnie Moeller for a completed project at 3701 Rosemont Pass. Anybody like to offer a motion on the grading releases?
Second.
Which was made by Supervisor Russo, seconded by Supervisor Altieri to release the escrows as read. Any further questions or discussions on the motion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Items 9.8 through 9.11 deal with refunds, so we're going to try to take them as one motion also. Consider approving a $100 refund to Sam Construction at 4 Canby Chase for a permit review fee paid on a permit submitted to the incorrect township. Wow. Consider approving a $100 refund to Mona Ross at 4240 Florida Avenue for a duplicate UNO payment. Consider approving a $534.92 refund to Jack Olympi and Sarah Dill at 3543 Rhodes Avenue due to a tax assessment reduction. And consider approving a $250 refund to Anita Bork at 3911 Woodland Way for an online police donation that was applied to an incorrect category. Would anybody like to offer a motion on those for you?
So move for approval.
Motion was made by Supervisor Partridge, seconded by Supervisor Roberts Lightcap. Any further questions or discussions on the motion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. That's outstanding. That takes care of our payments. Moving on to item 10, bills. We have 3 items there. I'm going to offer them as one motion again. I had the opportunity to, before this evening's meeting, to review the bills on check register A dated July 23rd, 2021, in the amount of $30,269.55. The bills on check register A dated August 9th, 2021, in the amount of $310,435.84. And the bills on check register B dated August 9th, 2021, in the amount of $91,157.37. And that is my motion that we approve all those bills as read.
Second.
Motion was seconded by Supervisor Partridge. Any questions or discussions?
So moved. It's gotta be moved.
I offered the motion. It's okay. Okay. Motion was made by myself and seconded by Supervisor Partridge. Any further questions and discussions on the motion? Any discussions, questions from members of the general public? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item 11, developer releases. There's separate releases. We'll take them separately. Item 11.1, consider approving escrow release number 2, which is the final release in the amount of $2,589 to Pereira Construction for a completed project at 20 Reese Avenue.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is made by Supervisor Russo, seconded by Supervisor Roberts Lightcap to approve item 11.1. Any further questions or discussions on the motion? Any questions from members of the public? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item 11.2, consider approving escrow reduction number 4, the final reduction in the amount of $22,280.30 for a completed project at 34 Reese Avenue, as approved by the township engineer.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is made by Supervisor Altieri, seconded by Supervisor Roberts Lightcap. Any further questions or discussions?
Yes, I'd like to ask Eileen, what is this?
The 4-unit apartment building at the end of Reese Avenue. It was a land development that was approved many, many years ago. And
This is a brand new building
yes,
and they're just getting done now?
they've had numerous punch list items that have just been completed.
Okay. I was gonna say, I was down that street not too long ago and I noticed a newer building at the end, but it didn't.
Oh, yeah, this is approved.
It was approved in
I
2009.
knew the other one because that was the
2009,
trees.
yeah.
The
Yeah,
other
it
one-
was
2009,
It was
wow.
originally approved in 2009. They did not move forward. There were a lot of hurdles to get over. We finally got them moving at about 2018, I guess.
Oh,
And
great, okay,
it is finished.
thank you.
Welcome.
Any further questions on item 11.2? Hearing and seeing none, motion was made and seconded. So all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Outstanding. Brings us to new business. Item number 1. Consider approving the Gather in the Circle community event at St. Albans Circle and the closure of Chapel Road, as well as the plan for DVRPC for traffic calming around the circle implemented by Gather in the Circle in Newtown Township.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Motion is made by Supervisor Roberts, seconded by Supervisor Russo to approve item 12.1. Now, not to delay our meeting any, I'm okay with 2 parts of this, I guess. Is there a plan of the traffic calming or what are we proposing to do?
Yes, I thought, was it not?
We talked about that a few weeks ago. didn't we?
Yeah,
Or a
well,
few
I believe
meetings
it
ago.
was shared with you a few weeks ago. But basically, they're bringing in the traffic.
So we're still just talking about narrowing the circle.
We're just
Yeah.
about talking
Yes.
about narrowing
With
the
the
circle.
temporary-
It's a temporary narrowing of the
That's why I just
circle.
wanted to clarify. Yeah, I was familiar with that. That's what I
Yeah,
make
that's the
sure.
one.
Okay.
I would just make make note that there are costs that DVRPC is covering, Delaware Valley Planning.
Yeah.
They're creating basically a trailer that could go out to multiple municipalities and help them. So they're talking about doing the delineators and those kind of expenses. There's some speed humps that we're putting in. I say humps, they're actually speed bumps. They're narrowed so that the tractor trailers where they need to cut the corner can do, but cars wouldn't want to do that as they were entering the circle. And there's, but like the line painting, that would be something the township would take on because it's not a reusable piece of the expense. And so I just wanted you to be aware that there are some expenses that we're taking on in that process. I will say one of the challenges we're having right now is we're not sure we can get line paint. We did a project last week and found out that we can't replace it right now. Evidently, the plant in Texas that makes it had an explosion. And so we are trying to figure out how to get line paint right now, borrowing, not going quite as far as stealing, but we are trying to do that. So I just wanted to let you know that may delay this project. And so, but I had a conversation with Logan from DVRPC this afternoon. He's also going to look to see if he can find some paint to see if he can help us.
So the long-term goal ultimately would be to, if the traffic calming works, actually to be rebuild the circle, turn it more into a traditional roundabout, if you will, which has a single lane.
Correct.
By design instead of the multiple lanes that we now have.
Correct.
And we're covering those Jersey barriers with flowers, right? Floral arrangements. and
Yes,
things like that.
that's one of the things that we would do. And that would be also an expense on the township to make sure that we did that so that it didn't look quite so
Jersey
in your
barriers.
face.
Well, yeah, and the reason why I'm asking that is obviously everybody has a heightened level of, I guess, awareness of construction anymore, right?
Yeah.
For right, wrong, or indifferent. So I just don't want to see the Jersey barriers in there. And then like a few weeks later, we start putting plants on there. I'd like to see that, like, kind of, if we can align those delivery dates together, and speaking to everybody here, I think that would be much beneficial to everyone involved.
I would say that we would want the plants, hopefully even before the Jersey barriers got placed.
Because if not, they're going to think we're putting condos where the Christmas tree was.
Yeah.
You're going to hear it. You heard it first.
Altieri Towers.
Altieri Towers, yeah.
Okay, any further questions or discussion on item 12.1? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item 12.2, consider accepting the proposed contract and authorizing the township manager to sign the contract with Debra Goetz Media Connections to handle the township communication.
So move for approval.
Mr. Altieri made the motion, and I heard Mr. Partridge second, so we'll say that Mr. Partridge seconded the motion. If that's okay with you, Ed, right?
Sure.
Any further questions or discussions on this? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any, no? Approved unanimously. Item 12.3, consider approving using Hometown Press to do an additional newsletter 4 times a year addressing Newtown Township residents of business. The cost consists of mailing other costs as covered by advertisements.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Which is made by Supervisor Altieri, seconded by Supervisor Russo to approve item 12.3. Any further questions or discussions on the motion?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, just one note. I just want to make sure, I just want to let you know, one of the things that we want to do to help encourage advertisers in both in community and in this, because we don't want to get ourselves spread so thin, is that anybody who advertises in one or the other, we will also recognize on our website as a supporter of our getting out our news. And so as long as the board's okay with that, I just wanted you to know, we're going to help and use that as a basis for helping to sell the advertising going forward, so that we would say these businesses support us. And so just so you know.
Great idea. All right, motion was made and seconded. Any further questions or discussions on the motion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item 12.4, consider the approval to hire Stephen Bradley for the full-time administrative / public works position at a rate of $20 an hour.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is made by Supervisor Altieri, seconded by Supervisor Roberts Lightcap. Just briefly, Mr. Neese, I don't, you want to just fill us in real quick on that? Just remind us again, I guess.
Yes, we talked, I believe it was the last meeting, maybe it was the meeting before, I'm losing a little bit of direction. But we talked about the fact that we had a communications position. We wanted to go with this third party. I think that's really important, and I appreciate the board's made that decision. That opened the door for us to get a little bit of administrative support that the communications position would have been doing. So instead of filling that way, we're doing it by bringing in a person, and that's what this person will do. This position is actually going to help George with administrative work on George's side, and they're going to kind of take over as administrative assistant for my position as well, so that Suzanne can move more. She's already picked up the HR stuff, but she's also going to be picking up, if you remember, the board voted to move forward with sustainability.
Right.
And so one of the things that we need is somebody to kind of champion that from a staff perspective. And Suzanne is going to be helping us champion that from the staff perspective, make sure that we stay on top of it. And Suzanne's really good about making sure people get things done. And so, and also getting a lot of things done. And so I appreciate her great skills in that area. And I think she's going to really help us to carry that out, because we have lots of different pieces that are going to be moving with the sustainability. I mean, it literally involves every committee in the township. It involves you, it involves all the staff, and I need somebody who can really run with that and guide us through that process, and that's going to be Suzanne. So for Suzanne to do that, I needed to take something off her plate, and so Steve is going to be doing that for us by taking the administrative roles for both George and I.
That's great. That's great. I think it's great that we can share people across departments and make the best use of people. So. Motion was made and seconded. Any further questions or discussions on the item 12.4? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item 12.5, consider the approval to hire Heather Hastings for the full-time codes administrative support position at a rate of $20.75 an hour.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is made by Supervisor Russo, seconded by Supervisor Roberts Lightcap to approve item 12.5. I don't think we need to go into this. We know that we need this person. We know we need assistance in enforcing our code. So any further questions or discussions on this? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item 12.7, discuss the URDC Phase 1 engineering proposal for Greer Park.
And
Board.
can I get you to back up one?
You missed one, John.
Did I miss one? I did miss one.
12.6.
12.6. I'm trying to get that. 12.6, consider the approval to advertise for the position of cleaning, weeding support position. Mr. Neese, please explain this one to us.
Yes. So I wanted to, we had put in the budget this year to actually hire a part-time person to do cleaning at the township building. And we looked and you approved us advertising. I forget, back in January, February timeframe, we went out. We got a list of, I think it was a very small response. I think 2 or 3 people, 4 people, something like that. I think we made you aware at that time that we're having a real challenge finding part-time folks. We looked at this. We took an examination of a couple things. One is we examined what dollars we had. We also examined like health benefits and things like that, how we would do this. We had a couple of our recent hires in Public Works that chose not to use all the health benefits. Either they didn't have a family or they've chosen not to take the benefits that way. So it freed up a few dollars. And so George and I talked and we said, what would be ideal would be to have somebody here full-time to address the issues. And the idea that they would probably be working from somewhere around 2 o'clock in the afternoon until probably about 30 minutes from now, with the idea that they would be here in the evenings during meeting times to be able to make sure the building was taken care of, clean, and that kind of thing. They would be cleaning while the meeting's going on, but they could also make sure the building was locked up afterwards, those kind of things. The real win for this, it's like giving 5 to 6 hours back to our Public Works team every day. Because what happens in the morning, they bring 5 or 6 guys into the building and they do a blitz for about 45 minutes to an hour being here. And so they do that every morning before they start their day, doing whatever else it is. By doing this, we free them up to be out and doing the things we need them to be doing. And so we really looked at this and felt like this was the best way. And so I gave Rich the assignment of going through and finding out whether or not we could do this within the budget we currently had without going and actually doing a budget increase in 2021. And he came back with the numbers and said, yep, we can do that. We looked at, we budgeted about 25,000 for a part-time, and we're using some dollars right now paying a third party. We would eliminate the need for the third party. This person would come in and do all the cleaning and take care of those things for us. And one of my biggest pet peeves is that we just don't have enough time to do all the weeding out front and keeping up with that. And it just doesn't make our first impression that people have when they enter the building. And so one of the things that I've asked is that this person would be responsible for that kind of stuff as well.
So that was where I was getting tripped up. So they'd spend the first part of their day as, I guess, essentially grounds maintenance, go around, clean up, leaf blow, pull the weeds out of the beds and things like that.
And then they could come in the building as we're finishing our day, do all the cleaning. If there's a meeting going on, be here to help out in any way, and then set up for the meeting, whatever. I mean, as it is now, George's team comes over and sets up for the different meetings each day. And so it just takes time out of their schedule. This would have somebody here to help with
This
that.
would be a full-time maintenance guy for the building.
Basically, yes.
Which kind of makes sense. I don't think our public works should be doing that at this point since we've got so many other demands on it. All right,
So move for approval.
there's a second.
Second.
Motion is made by Supervisor Partridge, seconded by Supervisor Russo to approve item 12.6. Any further questions or discussions on the motion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, now we'll move on to 12.7. Discuss the URDC Phase 1 engineering proposal for Greer Park. Says here the board may choose to approve the proposal to start the engineering process contingent on awarding of either the DCED, DCNR, or National Fish and Wildlife grants. Now, as I understand this, Mr. Neese, you're asking for us to approve URDC, who's done all the work on Greer Park to this point, to actually start the design pending receipt of one of these grants.
Correct. In other words, we don't want to necessarily jump in and start doing it before that, but as soon as we get a notice of award, if we're in a position where it's 2 weeks or so before the board meets again, that particularly the Fish and Wildlife is a very short window. We have, I think, less than 18 months to take action, get whatever it is that we're doing like get it designed, get it done and be finished in 18 months. That's not very long. And so we just wanted to make sure we had every piece lined up so we could get started and go.
And I'm all for efficiency. I hate to say that we got lost time because we have a meeting date or something like that. So again, if we, God forbid, didn't get any of these grants, we're not starting anything.
Correct.
Anybody like to offer a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is made by Supervisor Altieri, seconded by Supervisor Russo to approve item 12.7. Any questions or discussions on the motion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item 12.8, consider approving the capital stormwater capital plan totaling a not to exceed amount of $28,800 as submitted by the township engineer. Eileen, I'll kick this to you, give Steve a break.
Kick it to me. The request came, I believe, from two different sources. One being the Finance Committee meeting regularly and being concerned that there's this somewhat black hole of what do we own stormwater wise, storm sewer wise, and what does that mean as far as capital outlay that could be coming down the road. So the proposal that's before you identifies that we would take the existing MS4 mapping that you've seen recently and showed you where neighborhoods have a lot of storm sewers and some that have almost zero. But to try and head off something like what happened over on Poplar and Clearbrook, get an understanding of what the township owns as far as size, type, age of construction, at least, initially, and then if we know of any repair or replacement work that's been done, identify all of those things, and based on current prices, try and value what replacement would be. If you all recall, when we first came on board, the road program had been halted for so long that there was a pretty significant need, and we took the active segments report from PennDOT, went out and evaluated roads as to poor, fair, and good condition so that we could start to develop a plan for how to attack it. That's basically what this would do for you. We'd have it searchable by type of pipe, size of pipe, neighborhood location, because if you're going to do any work, pretty typically you'd be doing it in a general location because they've all been put in around the same time and would need repair. So that's it in general, I think.
Would this also, I'm sorry to interrupt, would this also help kind of, in this report, would it navigate where we've had a lot of complaints and things like that? Or just would it help to?
It's purely from a financial standpoint.
Okay.
It's not that kind of, it's not like the two drainage studies where they were
Okay.
driven by complaints,
Mhm.
but tied to those, we've been asked numerous times to try and prioritize.
Right.
One of the aspects of the proposal is also to have spot checks done in each neighborhood so that we can go out and see, if we had headed off something like Poplar, gone and taken a look and seen that the bottom was rusting out. And I think a similar project was done on Hansel in 2013.
Yeah.
So those types of things, if we're able to head them off, or at least plan for them,
Right.
We'd be able to take care of them over time and at least.
And this is also part of the Finance Committee subcommittee, which is the
Correct.
capital.
Which is the capital piece for the subcommittee of finance. And it just so, we've asked Eileen to start with this piece, the finance, the capital plan, improvement plan group came back and said, we think there's really two pieces to stormwater to be addressed. One is to understand the existing infrastructure that we have, and that's what this part of the project is. The second part would be to go back and start looking at all those neighborhoods like we did in the Heights and like we did in Upper St. Albans. I'm saying that right, Upper St. Albans. Yeah. Always
We
get
have new
those-
names. Yeah,
I
we have new
always get
names.
those two confused. But the idea being that that's the next thing we're going to look at.
Yes.
We're going to look at all of the places that we have stormwater problems, going back to the question about problems, and say, what's it going to take to start addressing all of this? And just like we've come up with a plan for the road program, we would come up with a plan for stormwater. And, you know, I'm anticipating that number's going to be a little bit bigger, to be fair, than what our road program dollars are. But if we're going to be proactive like we've been with roads, you know, and you started that 6 years ago, we're doing the same thing with police cars. We're doing the same thing with some of the other pieces. We're doing it. We're starting the vehicle replacement program for public works. All of those things. We're starting and we're getting that. This is just one more step in helping us to really understand. And so we decided to take on something that we can't see, right? Nobody sees what's under the road. They see the grates on the top, but we don't really see what's underneath. And we said we probably ought to take that on, because if there's anything that's going to cost you in the future that we have no idea, it's what's under the ground that we don't see. And so we're trying to make sure that we'll have some numbers that you'll be able to start putting your arms around as a board and starting to make some really tough decisions about how we move forward.
Because when we've approached road program projects, we've always evaluated inlets and those tops and anything there, but we've not gone between those points and really looked at the piping themselves.
So I guess jumping off of that, what Stephen just said, how long do you expect this to take?
I wasn't sure if there was any timeline that was required. That was one of the things we didn't discuss when I put the proposal together.
Well, I would think that since I think the drainage study reports are not yet finalized, right? And the way that Stephen just explained this is that this is going to give us a complete picture of how we as a board need to start looking at where we need to either install new storm sewer systems or replace existing ones. I personally would like to start having that conversation for potentially next year's budget. So sooner rather than later, so that if we need to start putting money aside or start having a conversation, again, just hypothetically, about a stormwater fee or anything like that, that we start having it for this year's budget, so that it can start, you know, we can start seeing some, because let's face it, the only thing, we can do all the studies that we want, and we can spend $28,000 on 15 different studies over the next 6 years. It's great for us to continue to keep doing these reports, but people want to see pipes in the ground.
Sure.
People's houses are getting destroyed. People's properties are getting destroyed. And so what I don't want to see is another report and another report and another report and further discussion. And then we are 6 years down the line and all we have is a room full of reports and no action on anything. So my personal opinion would be light a little fire under everyone and try to get this done professionally, but also, you know, pretty quickly.
So that would put it at by the end of October. Is that too late? Is that?
Yeah, the finance committee was not moving that fast, but if that's how fast the board
Well,
wants
I
to
think the
move.
board, I'm only
Yeah.
speaking for myself.
Yeah.
But this board member thinks the finance committee needs to get on our schedule, and our schedule,
Yep.
again, my schedule is sooner rather than later.
So would that be sufficient end of October for you guys?
Are you saying you could get it done by the end of October?
I'm going to give it my best shot.
Do we have any costs for these? I mean, you do these studies, do we have estimated costs for all these?
That's what she's doing. That's what
Well,
the study is.
this is like a roadmap. This is going to say that we
This would
own
be like a
1,000
this
feet
would
of
be like a
pipe,
spreadsheet?
and this feet is, this
Yes.
feet's this size and going to cost this much to replace these, replace here, and this
We
piece
have to
needs-
get the quantities and then we would
All right.
use.
Much like we
current-
do with the road program, it gives us a baseline to work from. And while it's not going to address some of the larger problems necessarily, it's not designed to do that. It will allow us to sit there as a board and say, okay, this year we know we've got a couple of pipes that are going to fail here, here, and here. So maybe we can take steps to fix some of these other problems before they become big problems
Right.
as we move ahead and do the very large capital projects in the areas that don't have any storm sewer to begin with. You know, with the way the whole concept when I started the road program was that instead of just, you know, picking and choosing who's screaming the most every year for roads, we have a system now. We know what roads are in good, fair, poor condition, et cetera. So when we set up the program each year, we're drawing from the roads that most need the attention. Well, I think that's what this plan is designed to do, so that when we're looking to spend drainage dollars, this allows us to at least attack the problems that are imminent,
Before they happen.
before they become much larger problems.
Or was your question, how much money are we going to continue to spend on studies and reports?
Well, I understand what you're saying now, but I guess we have to have this report done so we can start hitting some of this stuff right off the list.
I mean, right now, we get a complaint for a pipe failure, we go out and we fix it. You know, maybe we could start doing things to preempt that, you know, be proactive, like Steve said, to try to address some of these things ahead of time, so we're not just playing catch up all the time. Or we're not finding it when we're paving the road and, oh, the pipe collapsed, we need to, and the problem is, it's on the ground, we don't have any idea what the hell's going on there. And, you know, we come up, these problems come up all the time with residents about this pipe and that pipe, we don't even know they exist, so maybe this gives us that map to say, here's where the pipes are, can identify areas where we don't have easements, and things like that, just so we can be a little bit more proactive to address some of these drainage problems as we deal with some of the larger problems that we have separate studies for, which are primarily in neighborhoods that don't have storm sewer to begin with.
Or at least not enough.
Or at least, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, do you expect that this is going to be more or less a report on the conditions of these? I mean, I would find it hard to believe that we're going to discover a lot of new storm sewer systems that we never knew of before. I'm
Not
guessing this-
discovery, this is quantifying. Right now, we have mapping because we were required to have mapping through the MS4 program.
Yeah.
This will take that mapping and say the 15-inch RCPs, we have 3,000 feet of them in the township.
Yeah, I'm nodding and I have no idea what that means, but
That means that's the total length that you own and you're responsible for.
Reinforced concrete.
okay.
It's a fictitious number, but it's a way we would quantify those holdings that you have. And at the same time, do a general assessment based on the age of its original installation. If it was put in the 50s, chances are it's going to be in pretty bad shape if it hasn't been repaired or replaced up till now. So all of those factors would be in the spreadsheet. So we'd be able to search things by age. We'd be able to search things by size, type, so that if we're looking at putting out some kind of an improvement program, we can know the exact amount that we have to work from in order to get those repairs done. If we're doing lining of it rather than replacing, those kinds of things, it's just a way to know what you've got to work with.
Got it.
There may be some steps that we can take with the storm sewer, as I said, to line it, or do some other things so we just don't end up replacing 1,000 feet of pipe because it collapsed. Or maybe we knew it was bad and we lined it, well, then we saved, you know, a few $100,000 along the way.
Save all the excavation costs.
Yeah.
You know, there's trenchless technologies that are emerging all the time that you can do things
We just
with.
need to get a better handle, I think, on what we have under the ground. We don't really know it.
And I get that, and I think this is obviously important and it's needed. I think we keep saying all that. I just want to make sure that we're not losing sight, and I know that we're not. But we don't, what I have a hard time doing is when a resident comes to me time and time and time again, especially in my neighborhood, where we are getting crushed, storm after storm after storm, because we're an older neighborhood prior to Act 167, where we didn't have a stormwater infrastructure. It is, to an extent, and I'll just speak for myself, frustrating that I keep telling them, we're studying it, we're studying it, we're studying it. I want to be able to give them some concrete vision, or at least a tentative vision of where we are, besides me saying we're looking at it. We hear you, we're addressing it. They know that we're looking at it. They've been hearing it for years. I want to give them some solutions now. And I know I mentioned the stormwater fee. I am bringing that up as an individual myself to just look at, you know, how we can fund much needed infrastructure.
This program that we're creating is actually a first step in that direction, if we wanted to go that way.
Perfect.
This is the first thing we would need to do, is we have an inventory of our stormwater facilities. So this is what that's going to give us.
Thank you.
Any other questions on item 12.8? Anybody like to offer a motion? I don't think we got there yet, so.
I'll offer the motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is made by Supervisor Altieri, seconded by Supervisor Roberts Lightcap to approve item 12.8. Any further questions or discussions on the motion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item 12.9, consider awarding the 2021-2022 de-icing salt contract on behalf of 10 Delaware County municipalities to Eastern Salt Company, who had the lowest responsible bid of $63.60 per ton. This is award is subject to acceptance by the other municipalities of their share of the contract obligation.
So move for approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is made by Supervisor Partridge, seconded by Supervisor Russo to approve item 12.9. Just as a reminder to everybody that might be listening or in the audience, we take the lead for 10 neighboring municipalities on getting this salt bid. By doing this and grouping everybody together, we get a much better salt bid than we could otherwise get ourselves or through some other means. George, how's this cost relate to last year's cost?
So we kind of took it on the chin this year. It's a bit higher. It's about $13 a ton higher than it was last year. It is still cheaper than what the state price is this year.
There we
So
go.
our bidding it out, we did better than the state. I would say that of the 5 bids that we received, this was the low bid at $63.60, and the high bid was $79.87. So they were all through there. When you look at the state contracts throughout the entire state, you look at different counties. Some of the counties were authorizing bid acceptances in the $70, up to $80 range.
So if we tried to buy salt from the state through their contract, we'd be paying more money per ton.
If we were in, Delaware counties this year was 30 cents higher than what
This is
we
great.
bid this year.
Well done.
How much salt do we typically buy in a year?
So the whole contract, the whole 10 municipalities, it's about 11,000 tons. Our own township, it's usually about 1,000.
Thank you.
I would mention that several of the municipalities have reached out to me and thanked us for doing this. They really do appreciate us doing this. So I want to thank you for allowing us to do this and take this lead.
No, I think this is great. I know in the past, we've had issues sometimes where we didn't have salt, but at least now, as we are the leaders, the controllers of the contract, if the salt runs dry, obviously we'll have it first. So I like that concept too, So any further questions or discussions on this item? Motion was made and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item 12.10, consider authorizing advertising for bids for the library carpet replacement project. The carpet replacement work itself will be facilitated by a CoStar's contractor, company who will handle the boxing of books, moving of fixtures, replacing wall fixtures of books after the carpet replacement needs to be bid, as it will potentially exceed the bidding threshold.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is made by Supervisor Russo, seconded by Supervisor Russo. Motion is made by Supervisor Russo, seconded by Supervisor Altieri to approve item 12.10. I don't know, Mr. Neese, does the carpet need to be replaced?
The carpet needs to be replaced really badly. It's actually still buckling
Okay,
in different places. We've looked at it. We've tried re-gluing it in certain places, and that's not holding and it's not working. So yes, the carpet needs to be replaced.
Are we going back with carpet like this?
We're going back with tiles to help
Good.
address that.
So that we have to replace a section, we can at next time.
We can do that, exactly. The one thing I would add, the challenge in the library that's a little different than our other areas is the fact that you have how many books? Yeah, 45,000 books that we have to move in addition to all of the.
Scan those yet?
Scan those, yeah. In addition to the shelving units and all of those kind of things that the carpet sits on. That's the challenge that we're running into. And the challenge is that now that we're meeting again, we can't use this room to store everything in. And so it adds a little bit of a dynamic of having, what are we going to do with all of those materials? Because I think it's going to take about a month and a half. Is that correct, George?
That is correct.
Yeah, to do the project. So moving everything out is going to take a couple of weeks. Putting the new carpet, they have to take out the old carpet. They have to grind the floor, get up all the old stuff, and then put the new carpet back down, and then bring everything back in. And it's a very specialized group that does libraries, because if you know, the last thing you want is it not to be helter-skelter, because everything in this library is based on what the book is numbered. And if you put it in the wrong spot, then where do you find it? And so there's companies that do this and do it well, and that's what we're looking for.
so what we're authorizing, the carpet replacement work is through CoStar's, which doesn't need anything from us. We're just buying it off the state.
Correct, off the state contract.
What we're authorizing is the moving company,
Correct.
essentially, because we expect that that's going to exceed whatever it is, the $18,000 threshold or something.
Correct.
Okay.
And this is an item that's budgeted.
Right.
It may be a little bit more than what we budgeted, but this is an item we had in the 2020 budget that got moved to the 2021 budget.
Okay. Motion was made and seconded. Any further questions or discussions on the motion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item 12.11, consider approving one scheduled leaf pickup for a home in the township this year, as was performed in 2020 due to COVID-19. In the interest of time, Mr. Neese, I don't want to get into a big discussion, but I think in conversation with the board, and if any board member feels differently, jump in. But I don't think the board's really in favor of one. I think we'd rather go back to the way we used to do it and get as many leaf pickups, at least 2, 3, whatever we used to do in, and just continue to do it this year. If COVID becomes a problem again, then we can reassess at that point. But I think I'd rather proceed, and again, I mean, board members never jump in, but I think I'd rather proceed as we just go like we have in the past, other than last year, and just simply get as much done as we can. I know some residents enjoyed the scheduled pickup, but I know a lot of residents that I guess are where you felt in the schedule. I mean, we can't pick everybody's leaves up in November. So, some residents that were picked up in October still had leaves in November, whereas the guys picked up in November are going, it was great. So I think to be fair to everybody in town, we got to do as many of these pickups as we can and not just go with one schedule.
Okay.
Any board member disagree?
No.
So we're not going to take a vote, but we're not going to approve that. So. All right, item 12.12, consider authorizing an advertisement for a 2021 line painting project. This project will facilitate the repainting of traffic lines and markings at several intersections along Westchester Pike and Newtown Street Road, as well as repainting center lines on township roads. Before we take an action on this, just to remind everybody that PennDOT, even on state highways, the only thing they're responsible for are the double yellow lines and the white lines. Every intersection that we put in and all the paint associated with that intersection on state highways becomes our responsibility. So all those stop bars, all those markings, everything like that is our responsibility, not PennDOT's, even on a state highway. We have our own painting needs on the streets. We have some streets with double yellow lines and things like that. So in light of the paint shortage, are we gonna be able to do this?
We're hoping that some of these companies that do this all the time actually have bought lots of paint.
Warehouses of paint.
Warehouses, and that they can do it because one of the reasons why we're actually pushing to go out is because we don't think we can get it ourselves to do. We do some of this ourselves. We couldn't do all of this anyhow because it's so expensive, but we just think it's a better way to go this year.
Concept here, since we're at this point, we're only advertising for advertising, perhaps in our proposal, we could put in a clause that you provide us with X number of gallons of paint too. If they have the paint, rather than us buying it from a vendor somewhere else, maybe we'll make our contractor drop off, I don't know, whatever, we need 100 gallons of paint for our use as part of the contract. If they do have warehouses of paint, make it part of their contract if they supply us some paint extra. And again, all we're doing at this point is advertising it. So. All right, good.
I think it's a great idea.
I'll make that amended motion there, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Second.
This is made by Supervisor Altieri. Is there a second?
Ed did it.
Oh, Ed did it? Thank you, Mr. Partridge. Motion was seconded by Mr. Partridge. Any further questions or discussions on this item? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item 12.13, discussion and potential action for the Walk for the Wounded concert on September 18th, 2021. Mr. Neese.
Yeah, so I actually met with the Walk of Wounded group this afternoon. They're very excited about being here in Newtown this year. It will be honoring our veterans out at Drexel Lodge Park on September 18th. It's pretty much close to an all-day event. I think they start at noon and they go to something like 6 or 6:30 for the event. And so we're excited to have them. We have talked to them about some of their needs. And the good news is one of the things that we were struggling with early on was parking. We think we figured out how to do all the parking there at Drexel Lodge and have nobody being bussed in and or walking down Westchester Pike, which we were very concerned about and did not think was a good idea. So I think pretty much they have asked for some support from us. They would like us to engage the fire police to help, and they would like us to engage I believe we think we can get away with one public works person for the day out there just to be there to support them. We have we'll provide them some cones and the use of our gator and things like that to help them move things around there on the site that they need. They will be looking for some volunteers from the public to come in to help make sure they have great service for our veterans who have served us. And so we'll be getting that word out over the next couple of weeks as well. In addition, they're hoping to get a Boy Scout troop or something like that to help take an offering or, a collection. I said offering. Sorry, my church background comes out, but a donation to help support our veterans. And so it is a ticketed event. The public is welcome to attend if they want to purchase a ticket, but it is a ticketed event, and it will be all day at Drexel Lodge on the 18th.
Is there any action you need from us?
At this point, as long as there's no objection to me getting the resources from the township that we need, I mean, there is some expense, but I think that it's minor, and I think it's for a great cause.
That's a great event.
And they really are doing a great service for our veterans to be in attendance.
I think that's awesome. Everybody good with this? Yeah.
Yes.
We're good. All right, excellent. Item 12.14, consider authorizing advertising for bids for the stormwater project for Glendale Road. This is a project being subsidized from a grant for low volume roads, I guess, from PennDOT. So,
Yes.
go ahead.
So this is a grant that we applied for
It's actually not through PennDOT.
Oh,
It's low volume road through Delaware County Conservation District.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay.
That was the first of the 3 studies. Checked Glendale out and submitted last October. They awarded in December, and we have until June of 2022 to finish the project. But we have the finishing touches going on the bid specification and want to get that out to bid.
Fantastic.
So this would help address an area of concern that we've been we've had a lot of comments about over the last several years. And so
This would be pipes in the ground.
pipes in the ground, getting that
That's your
project started.
second advertisement thing for our new communications person. Anybody have to offer a motion on item 12.14?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is made by Supervisor Roberts Lycott, seconded by Supervisor Russo to authorize advertisements for bids for the Glendale Road Stormwater Project. Any further questions or discussions on the motion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Final item under new business is consider authorizing advertisement for a hearing on September 27, 2021. I guess that's at our regular meeting, to consider Newtown Township proposal to adopt the International Fire Code 2015 edition and all subsequent edition in its entirety in accordance with requirements of Act 45 of the Uniform Construction Code, Section 503, as adopted by the Newtown Township General Code. UCC, Uniform Construction Code, currently recognizes the International Fire Code only as it is referenced by the International Building Code. Now, not to go too much into the details here, since we're only advertising the hearing, what we're proposing to do is go beyond the state building code and actually adopt the entire International Fire Code ourselves.
That's my understanding. And yes, and there's some benefits, as I understand it, for the township in regards to making sure we're covered in all areas with fire management or, fire protection
Right,
within the
right.
homes and things like that. This process is a little different than some of our other ordinances. We actually have to have the hearing first, and then we present to the state, the uniform construction section at the state,
Right.
and they look at what this is, and then they make recommendations back, and then it comes back to you to actually advertise and do the change for the ordinance itself. But you have to have a hearing up front. There's all of these chances for the public to weigh in. And so it's not just as simple as a normal ordinance change that we have. And so I know that Joe has been a part of reviewing this. He and Andy have been working very closely. And so the first step is this hearing, and that's what we're starting.
And we're not committing to point other than to hold the hearing.
You're just holding the hearing, going down the process. This is something that was recommended to you by Andy from the codes department. You said you were interested in at least taking the steps to move forward. And so that's what we're
And
doing.
we can stop this anytime if it
You
becomes
can
too.
stop the process anytime you wish.
Before we get into the hearing, could Andy and Joe make a short presentation to the board as to what in effect this will do for us? What's the difference between the regulations that we have in place now and what would be if we adopted this code?
Ed, I think you're being a little bit premature, not to cut off Steve, but laws are authorizing now is the advertisement of the hearing for September 27th. We're talking, over a month from now, just to hear what the public has to say about this.
Yeah, I no, I understand, John. But before we even get into that, what's this do for us in effect? Do we want to get to the point of taking it to a hearing? I mean, I as one, I'm maybe the rest of the board, but I don't really know in effect what how this impacts us, as to the code that we currently follow. So that's my thought. I mean, if the rest of the board wants to move forward with the hearing, that's fine, but I would want to know more before we do that. So
Can we get like a crib sheet or something?
So if you would like, if it's all right, if I have a thought at the September 13th meeting, if my calculation is correct.
Yes.
At the September 13th meeting, I will have Andy do a short presentation on what this is, he and Joe together, or maybe Andy, however it'll be, but we'll have a short presentation on what the changes are so that you understand. There'll be a good opportunity for the public to hear prior to the hearing, and then you could hold the hearing.
Do we still want to advertise for the hearing on the 27th?
I believe that there's a requirement of advertising a certain number of days ahead. And that's the reason why that we were getting the permission now to advertise for the meeting, the second meeting in September, because I think we have to be over 30 days.
What do we go by now? We have clearly a fire code on the books, right?
It's
So
only is referenced in the International Building Code versus the Uniform Construction Code.
We have no separate fire code. The International Building Code, which is essentially the Uniform Construction Code, references the fire code at certain areas with regards to means of egress and things like that. But some communities, we're not going to be the first one that does this, some communities actually adopt the International Fire Code itself as a standard, which takes you above and beyond the building code. There are certain things in the building code that don't cover all the fire things that you may want to have in this town.
But like residential sprinklers and all that other stuff.
That's part of the building code. That's not part of this.
And that's the building code, which we already have.
Right.
We've been operating under.
Yes.
Okay.
So I assumed that if we did go ahead and pass this just to get it advertised and then get the presentation on the 13th, after the presentation on the 13th, if we did decide that we don't want to go through with the hearing, even though we've advertised the cost of advertising, but other than that, we can make that decision to not have the hearing. That's still a possibility. That's a question.
You can always choose not to. I mean, if the board chooses to wait and you just want a presentation on the 13th, we'll move it to the October meeting. We're just trying to move along something that we thought that the board was interested in, and we were trying to get it moving. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, I was interested in it when we discussed it before, but I would want to just have the presentation to understand more detail about the impact.
I think it'd be best, Steve, that if we're going to have a presentation from Andy, which would be a good idea, that we table this item and list it under old business for the meeting on the 13th. And then we can, once Andy's presentation is done, then we can make the decision to advertise. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves.
Gotcha.
Are we good with that?
Yes.
Sounds good. Yep.
So let's table that item. Outstanding. Okay. Woo. On page 3 of 196. That's what it says. Old business, moving ahead here. Consider approving the construction of the pool and retaining wall, which will be partially located in the White Horse Conservation Restriction Area at 64 Ferry Lane, as approved by the HOA. I know we talked about this before.
Did we get that line moved?
I believe there's somebody here.
Remember the last time we said that he was, the whole issue was the way the line
I've
was?
not seen anything more.
Come on, sir.
We went with the HOA.
But wouldn't we have to move the line?
There still has to be a permit.
Please introduce yourself.
Yep, Michael Burke, 64 Ferry. Thank you for having me again. Thank you for all your time. Based on your commentary last meeting, I was able to obtain HOA signature, thanks to council, thanks to all of your help. Special thanks to Suzanne, who helped organize everything and guide things through over the past months. So my understanding is today is just kind of the formality, and the second piece of this, after obtaining HOA approval, to submit for approval with the township. I don't know if I've said or described that correctly, but
That's my understanding.
that's
You
what's
needed
brought me
approval
here
from us.
again this evening.
So, Mr. Neese, we have in writing the HOA's approval of this.
I have gotten that I think it came in through Andy, that the HOA had approved this.
Yeah. I'm just making sure. For the benefit of all the people that are listening online.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is made by Supervisor Russo, seconded by Supervisor Altieri to approve the item 13.1 based on the homeowners association's approval. Any further questions or discussions on the motion?
And the fact that there's also a older retaining wall. So
Well,
it's
yeah.
not as if we're really going into the easement area.
It's a good point. We're building a boulder retaining wall, not a concrete or anything like that. Any further questions or discussions on the motion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you all.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, item 13.2, consider approving the Finance Committee's recommendation to issue RFPs for insurance and audit. Mr. Neese.
So if you'll remember, and I'm losing track of dates, but I believe it was back in June, you asked us to take back to the Finance Committee the idea of whether or not we should do RFPs for insurance and audit. I do need to disclose that in the meeting, the Finance Committee related to the audit, it may should have been listed as two separate agenda items because of this, recommended that we be working with the Audit Committee in order to we'd be working with the Audit Committee related to the audit. You have elected auditors. I said, not, I called on the committee, I'm sorry, but you have elected auditors that have always been very involved in the audit process.
Right.
And so they kind of actually said, the Finance Committee said they were okay with the RFP, but they thought should be in conjunction with the elected auditors. Before I took it back to the elected auditors, I wanted to bring it back to you. Two of the elected auditors serve on the Finance Committee. I would say they felt like, I don't want to speak for them necessarily, but I didn't necessarily feel that they were ready to move forward with doing an RFP at this time. So, but I'm more than happy to take it back to the elected auditors separately and see if that's what you want. But if you were saying, well, if we're working with elected auditors, maybe or maybe not, whether you wanted to do from there. But we did what you asked us to do. We took it to the Finance Committee, and that's what the Finance Committee came back. They did recommend it for sure on the insurance, but the audit piece was contingent of working with the elected auditors.
So should we just not have the audit as part of this?
I think I probably should have listed it as two separate action items because of that.
Well, we could just,
Table it all.
Well, no,
Table it all and do it all at the same time.
well, if we're not going to approve the audit piece, we can just simply modify this as written and just simply approve the RFP for the insurance and come back to the audit another time.
Yeah, they're really two separate things. My guess is to be honest with you, if we go out for the RFP for the insurance, it's a lot bigger than the one for the audit. The audit's pretty simple and straightforward. Rich has already started working a little bit on the RFP for the insurance based on the fact that the Finance Committee made the recommendation. And I asked him to start pulling all of our coverage so that we would make sure we covered everything. I would also like some clarification. I'm assuming that we are not going out for at least health insurance because health insurance is in the trust. And in order to leave the trust, we have to give a certain number of days' notice, which we could not do at this point, even if we were to pull the plug. And I would also remind the board and remind the public, we've actually gone, I believe it's 3 years or 4 years, 3, 4. We've gone, so we've had the last 4 years at the same price because they haven't done an increase the last 3 years for our health insurance. I don't know many places that can say they have not had a health insurance increase. And so
That's impossible.
I mean, I think the way we're doing it as a trust is working. And so I would hate to do anything there.
So this insurance is not health insurance. This is commercial general liability.
We're focusing on the commercial liability, and we just wanted to clarify that with the board based on the different conversations we've had.
So we could just approve this as consider approving the finance committee recommendation to issue an RFP for insurance and just leave it at that.
You could, yes.
Anybody like to offer that revised motion?
Yeah, I'll move that.
There's a second.
Second.
Motion is made by Supervisor Partridge, seconded by Supervisor Russo to consider approving the finance committee's recommendation to issue an RFP for insurance. Any further questions or discussions on the motion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We have 3 resolutions. Item number 1, consider approving resolution 2021-26, which is the application authorization for liquid fuels allocation of funds for the 2021 line painting project.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve Resolution 2021-26, a resolution authorizing an application to the Delaware County Council for an allocation of county liquid fuel tax funds in 2021 for the municipal roadway street improvement program of 2021. Whereas the undersigned municipality decides to take advantage of the act approved June 1, 1945, PP 1242, and is provided in the act approved May 18, 1945, PL 803, permitting counties of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania to appropriate and expend monies for the improvements and maintenance of state highways and state aid highways or public highways in any county of the Commonwealth. Therefore, be it resolved that we, the officials of Newtown Township, Delaware County, Pennsylvania, in regular session assembled on this 9th day of August 2021, do hereby make application to the County Council of Delaware County for the allocation of county liquid fuel tax funds in the amount of $17,955 to be used toward the 2021 line painting program. It is certified by the municipality and the officers who execute this application that materials used and work done here under shall conform to the current Pennsylvania Department of Transportation specifications or specifications approved by the department, and that all work will be done within the legal right of way or with the permission of the abutting property owners. Adopted this 9th day, August 2021. That's my motion.
Second.
Motion is made by Supervisor Roberts Lycab, seconded by Supervisor Russo to approve item 14.1. Any further questions and discussions on the motion? Seeing and hearing none, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item 14.2, consider approving resolution 2021-27, which is the application authorization for Delaware County Open Space and Recreation Municipal Grant Program.
Resolution 2021-27, a resolution authorizing an application to Delaware County for Delaware County Open Space and Recreational Municipal Grant Program Assistance. Whereas Delaware County Council has established an open space and recreation municipal grant program to be utilized by the municipalities of Delaware County, and whereas the planning grants may be used by the municipality for planning services related to conservation, trails, park improvements, maintenance, stewardship, natural resource management, design, feasibility studies, and other related planning activities for open space conservation, trails, and park and recreational facility improvements. And whereas the Township of Newtown, Delaware County, Pennsylvania desires to participate in Delaware County Open Space and Greenways Municipal Grant Program in order to help fund a feasibility study for the Newtown Square Branch Rail Trail, and whereas the municipality commits to undertaking the development of the Newtown Square Branch Rail Trail, which is identified in the Newtown Township Comprehensive Plan and Newtown Township Greenway and Open Space Network Plan. Now therefore be hereby resolved by the supervisors of the Township of Newtown that the Township of Newtown, Delaware County, Pennsylvania hereby approves the filing of an application for the Delaware County Municipal Grant Program Assistant Stephen M. Neese, Township Manager, here authorized to directed to execute and file the appropriate forms with the Delaware County Planning Department, adopted this 9th day of August, 2021 by the Board of Supervisors, Newtown Township, Delaware County.
For second. Motion is made by Supervisor Russo, seconded by Supervisor Altieri to approve resolution 2021-27. Any further questions or discussions on the motion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item 14.3, consider approving resolution 2021-28, recognizing the Eagle Scout achievement of Matthew Ray Tano. I always love these, being an Eagle Scout myself. Go ahead, Mr. Altieri.
Resolution number 2021-28, recognizing Eagle Scout achievement of Matthew Rattano. Whereas the Board of Supervisors recognizes and congratulates Matthew Rattano on his achievement of Eagle Scout, the highest honor bestowed by the Boy Scouts of America. And whereas this achievement, all right, I just noticed a few typos. Whereas this achievement represents countless hours of work and community service by Matthew and the members of Troop 315 who worked to restore the grounds of the 1696 Thomas Massey House, including working on the replanting of their historic herb garden. And now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Supervisors directs a copy of this resolution to be presented to Matthew Rattano on the occasion of his Eagle Court of Honor to be celebrated on Saturday, August 14th, 2021 at St. Mark's Methodist Church, adopted this 9th day of August, 2021.
Motion was made by Supervisor Altieri, seconded by Supervisor Russo to approve resolution 2021-28, recognizing the Eagle Scout achievement of Matthew Ray Tano. Any further questions or discussions on the motion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We have no additional business listed. Would any board member like to offer a comment? No? Okay, good. Are there any members of the general public left in the audience that would like to offer a comment?
I would just say that I was the one who typed up that resolution late at night, so that those typos were 100% mine. I will own that. It was definitely me.
Now, then we are in adjournment. Our next meeting is Monday, September 13th, 2021. In the meantime, enjoy your summer, what's left of it. Have a happy Labor Day. We look forward to seeing you on the 13th. Thank you very much. We are adjourned.